Nobody expected adulthood to feel this financially exhausting. At some point, making money stopped feeling like progress and started feeling like maintenance. You get paid, the money arrives, and almost immediately, it disappears again. Rent, groceries, subscriptions, insurance, gas, utilities. A dinner you didn't even enjoy that much but felt socially obligated to attend. And then you check your bank account afterward and wonder how something so ordinary became so expensive. Meanwhile, everyone around you seems fine. Your co-worker just bought a brand new SUV. Someone you went to school with is posting from Italy. People online are living in beautiful apartments with warm lighting and expensive furniture and somehow always seem relaxed. And naturally, you start asking yourself the question almost everyone quietly asks now: how is everyone affording this? But the strange thing about modern life is that financial reality has become almost completely invisible. Because most people aren't showing you their financial situation. They're showing you a performance. And the performance is convincing. That's what makes this whole thing psychologically exhausting. You're comparing your private stress to other people's public image. And that's a comparison you will lose every single time. The average person today is exposed to more visible wealth in 1 week than previous generations probably saw in years. Luxury used to be rare. Now it's algorithmically injected into your brain every day. Designer clothes, beautiful homes, expensive skincare, luxury vacations, perfect kitchens, perfect lives. And after enough exposure, something strange starts happening psychologically. You stop seeing luxury as luxury. You start seeing it as normal. That's one of the biggest reasons everyone feels broke now. Not necessarily because life became impossible, but because the baseline for what feels acceptable quietly drifted upward. A normal apartment no longer feels impressive. A normal salary no longer feels safe. A normal life no longer feels successful. And social media accelerated all of it. There's actually a psychological concept called social comparison theory. Humans naturally evaluate themselves relative to other people. It's normal, it's biological. But your brain was designed to compare itself to maybe your neighbors, your co-workers, people in your town, not millions of people online selectively displaying the best moments of their lives. The internet created infinite comparison, which means there is now an infinite number of people capable of making you feel behind. No matter how much money you make, someone online appears to make more. No matter how attractive your apartment is, someone else lives somewhere better. No matter how hard you work, someone younger seems further ahead. And eventually, this constant exposure changes your perception of reality itself. You start feeling financially inadequate, even when objectively you're surviving. That's the hidden psychological cost of modern life. And it gets worse because people rarely show the trade-offs behind their lifestyle. The person posting luxury vacations might have thousands in credit card debt. The person driving the expensive car might be financing it over 7 years. The person living in the beautiful apartment might have no savings whatsoever. But online, the appearance is all that survives. And appearances are powerful because humans are emotional creatures. We react to visuals first and context second. A photo of someone drinking wine in Greece instantly creates a feeling. Your brain doesn't pause and ask, did they save for years? Is this funded with debt? Are they financially stressed? Did their parents help them? No. Emotionally, your brain simply registers they're winning. And over time, that feeling compounds. You begin to feel left behind in your own life, even when you're doing relatively okay. That's the disturbing part. Many people who feel broke today are not technically poor. They're psychologically overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by visibility, by comparison, by lifestyle inflation, by the rising emotional expectations attached to modern adulthood. Because adulthood itself became aestheticized. Years ago, adulthood was about stability, responsibility, survival. Now adulthood feels performative. You're expected to not only survive, but survive beautifully. Your apartment should look curated. Your body should look optimized. Your career should feel meaningful. Your relationships should look cinematic. Your weekends should look exciting. And all of this costs money, or at the very least, creates pressure to spend money. Modern consumer culture is incredibly good at convincing people that their unhappiness is solvable through upgrades. A better couch, better clothes, a better car, a better apartment, a better routine, a better version of yourself. You realize the feeling never fully goes away. the anxiety returns, the comparison returns, the emptiness returns. Because the issue was never just financial, it was psychological. People often imagine wealth as a finish line. Like eventually, you arrive at a number where everything finally feels calm. But that's not usually how it works. Because as income rises, expectations often rise with it. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it quietly traps people. You get a raise, so you move somewhere nicer. You start spending more socially. You normalize more expensive habits. You upgrade your standards, and eventually your income increases. But your sense of security barely changes. That's why there are people making six figures who still feel financially anxious all the time. Not because they're irresponsible, necessarily, but because modern life encourages visible consumption far more aggressively than invisible stability. Nobody congratulates restraint. Nobody sees the emergency fund, the retirement contributions, the disciplined budgeting, the debt avoidance. Those things are invisible, but consumption is visible, and visibility has become social currency. That's why people feel pressure to look successful before they actually are successful. The performance comes first. The stability maybe comes later. Sometimes it never comes at all. And honestly, a huge percentage of modern lifestyles are being held together by debt. Credit card debt continues rising. Car loans are getting longer. Buy now, pay later. Services are exploding. Entire industries now exist to help people afford lifestyles they technically cannot afford. And culturally, we normalized it. Financing became emotionally detached from spending. People no longer think, I'm spending £2,000. They think it's only £40 a month, which sounds harmless, until your entire life becomes monthly payments. Your car, your phone, your furniture, your subscriptions, your clothes, your streaming services, your gym membership. Everything becomes fragmented into manageable-looking pieces. But psychologically, it creates something dangerous: permanent financial tension. And many people are living inside that tension constantly. That's why even simple expenses now feel emotionally heavy. Buying groceries feels stressful. Going out feels calculated. Unexpected expenses feel catastrophic. Because most people don't actually have much margin. And margin is what creates peace. Not status, not aesthetics, not luxury. Margin. The ability to absorb life without panicking. That's what people are really craving. But modern culture rarely glamorizes peace. It glamorizes stimulation, movement, luxury, hustle, upgrades, visibility. Stillness doesn't perform well online. Quiet financial discipline doesn't go viral. Nobody posts, today I contributed to my retirement account and stayed home. But those invisible decisions are often the exact things creating long-term stability. That's the irony. The people who appear the wealthiest are sometimes financially fragile. And the people quietly building real security often look incredibly average. A paid-off car looks less impressive than a financed luxury SUV. A modest apartment looks less impressive than a luxury high-rise. Cooking at home looks less impressive than expensive restaurants. But appearances and stability are often moving in opposite directions. And deep down, I think many people already know this. That's why there's so much exhaustion around modern life. People are tired of performing, tired of pretending they're doing better than they are, tired of curating themselves constantly, tired of feeling like every aspect of life became competitive, because competition used to end eventually. Now it follows people home in their pocket. There is no psychological off switch anymore. You wake up and immediately see someone richer, someone happier, someone more attractive, someone more successful, before your day has even started. And after enough repetition, your nervous system begins interpreting ordinary life as failure. That's what social media did psychologically. It compressed the entire global hierarchy into your daily consciousness, which means comparison became ambient, constant, passive, automatic. And humans are not emotionally equipped for that level of exposure, especially when so much of what they're exposed to is curated. Because the internet doesn't reward honesty, it rewards aspiration. People post the vacation, the achievement, the beautiful dinner, the aesthetic apartment, not the panic attacks, not the debt, not the uncertainty, not the loneliness. And modern adulthood contains enormous amounts of hidden loneliness, especially financial loneliness. Many people secretly feel ashamed of their financial situation, ashamed they still live with parents, ashamed they don't earn enough, ashamed they can't afford homes, ashamed they feel behind. So instead of discussing it honestly, people quietly perform stability, which creates the illusion that everyone else has figured life out, when in reality, most people are improvising. Most people are anxious. Most people are trying to maintain appearances while privately feeling uncertain about the future. And honestly, that realization can be strangely comforting, because maybe your anxiety isn't personal failure. Maybe you've just spent years absorbing distorted expectations about what modern life is supposed to look like. Maybe the problem isn't that you're uniquely behind. Maybe the game itself quietly changed. Housing became more expensive. Social expectations became higher. Community weakened. Consumer culture intensified. Digital comparison exploded. And all of that happened simultaneously. Of course, people feel overwhelmed. Of course, people feel financially exhausted. Modern life became psychologically expensive, not just economically expensive. And I think that distinction matters. Because when people feel broke, they often assume the solution is simply more income. And yes, income matters. Money absolutely matters. Financial stress is real. But there are people making vastly different amounts of money who still experience the exact same emotional anxiety. Why? Because eventually this becomes about perception, about expectations, about comparison, about identity. There are people earning six figures who still feel unsuccessful because they compare themselves upward constantly. And there are people earning modest incomes who feel surprisingly peaceful because they stopped organizing their self-worth around visible status. That's the hidden shift nobody talks about. At some point, financial maturity stops being about impressing other people and starts becoming about reducing internal chaos. That's the real luxury, not constant consumption, peace, being able to buy groceries without stress, being able to survive emergencies, being able to rest without guilt, being able to exist without constantly feeling behind. That's what people actually want. But modern culture trained people to chase aesthetics instead of emotional stability. And aesthetics are endless. There is always a nicer apartment, a better wardrobe, a more luxurious lifestyle, a more optimized version of yourself. The finish line keeps moving. That's why people can spend years chasing success while never emotionally arriving anywhere. Because they're pursuing visibility instead of peace. And visibility is addictive. It temporarily relieves insecurity. It creates social validation. It signals status. But it rarely creates lasting emotional safety. That usually comes from much quieter things. Savings, discipline, community, perspective, lower comparison, financial margin. Things that don't always look impressive online. Which is why many financially stable people appear surprisingly ordinary. They stopped spending energy trying to look successful and started spending energy building lives that actually feel sustainable. And maybe that's the real shift people are slowly craving now. Less performance, less comparison, less pressure to constantly optimize every part of existence. Because eventually people realize looking rich and feeling secure are completely different experiences. One is external, the other is internal. One depends on audience perception. The other depends on nervous system stability. And if modern life has taught people anything, it's that external success without internal peace eventually feels hollow. That's why so many people today feel simultaneously connected and emotionally exhausted. Everyone is visible, everyone is comparing, everyone is performing, and almost nobody feels like they're enough. Not rich enough, not successful enough, not productive enough, not impressive enough. But maybe the goal was never to become endlessly impressive. Maybe the goal was simply to build a life that feels calm, a life where money becomes less emotionally consuming, a life where comparison loses its grip, A life where your nervous system no longer feels constantly under threat. That's real wealth. And ironically, the people closest to it often look the least extraordinary online because they stopped trying to win the performance and started trying to protect their peace instead.